Hey everyone, it's a little bit of everything, and this is going to be the first of one of my videos that's going to be focusing on our Christian spirituality and the study of the scriptures. And so I'm going to be having very different topics, and maybe it'll get more refined over time, hopefully. And today's topic, I just wanted to talk about maybe how we can continue putting on the new personality. And just because, and what's motivating me to share this is because I've gone through some things recently in my own experience, two basically major things ever since I've been baptized and been put in well, I don't want to say been put in, but experienced these different scenarios. And they both revolve around people in the congregation that I'm in. And so it was an experience where I feel you were, what is it? We are not tested beyond what we can bear, right? And it's not to say that these things originate from God, because they don't, but these things happen to us and they're allowed to happen, basically not removed, because it tests us to fitness, right? Tests us as to our fitness, right? As a Christian, and the can basically putting on the new personality. Because if you think about it, if we didn't have experiences like that and they were removed from us, how could we demonstrate for ourselves our faith and our submission to what our Father wants? And of course, what the Christian personality, right? Following the footsteps of Jesus. Now, the most important thing is to keep in mind with these things is we can actually look at what is defined as the fruitage of the Spirit in Galatians 5, verse 22. I actually used this scripture recently. So before, in the preface, we're given basically all these bad things, the works of the flesh. So you're given a parallel here. You have the works of the flesh, or as is called, just called that. I'm just looking at different translations here. It says the works of the flesh, that's Byington, or activities of the flesh. Rotherham says manifest, however, are the works of the flesh. So basically, these are the imperfect things that are rooted in sin, not so much basically being physically alive as it might imply from flesh and skin, though that's connected to that, but it's connected to from the very beginning, right? When Cain was asked by God, will you gain mastery over it? Because sin is crouching at the door, right? And it wants to get a hold of us. Or the works of the flesh, they want to get a hold of us, right? And this is a constant thing. And as this system goes on, or this timeline, you can see that things will increase that can make more trials for you to test this, right? But just like anything, like bodybuilding, for example, or language, the more you practice it correctly and you aren't giving way to it, basically actually physically exerting yourself to follow the footsteps of Christ and therefore manifest the fruitage of the Spirit, it becomes easier in those situations. Not to say that you won't have a situation that's difficult again, but that the ones that were difficult before, if they happen again, will become more easily dealt with. But going to 22, on the other hand, opposite, the fruitage of the Spirit. And if we look at the translation of that, we see the Spirit is love. So the fruit of the Spirit, that's what it says in all of them. Of course, in our translation, New World Translation, very good translation, it says fruitage of the Spirit. So it says there, on the other hand, the fruitage of the Spirit is love. That's the first and foremost thing, because, of course, what do we know? God is love. That's so important. Who has seen the Son has seen the Father. Therefore, the Son is also love. He's shown love just like the Father did. And we can see by his track record, of course, that he is a loving God. So that's why the first thing, the fruitage, because it comes from him, from his Spirit, we have love, joy, that means happiness, peace, that means we feel calm, right? And peace doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a peaceful moment or a continual peaceful existence, meaning nothing's going to happen. Things will happen, but you can still feel peace, or you can still feel joy in those situations. What? Patience. It's funny because all these things you can't really not have the opposite of, and then it would be in contradiction to everything else, right? Meaning you can't say, oh, I'm joyful, but I'm not, I don't have peace. It's like, well, you can't have, it's hard to experience peace and not have joy, or not have joy while experiencing peace. Same thing with patience. If you're not patient, then you're probably not peaceful, you're probably not joyful, you're probably not loving. If you're not kind, you're probably not patient, you're probably not peaceful, you're not probably joyful, you're probably not loving. Goodness, right? If you're not good, well, opposite of good, evil, self-explanatory. Faith is defined in Hebrews 11 as the expectation of, actually let's just turn to that right now. Our translation renders it as faith is the assured, basically factual, expectation of what is hoped for, right? Now if we look at some reference, Rotherham says, but faith is of the things hoped for a confidence. So same thing, right? Of facts, of a conviction when they are not seen, meaning we don't have to see it currently now, but we know it's going to happen, right? So going back to Galatians 5:22, the letter to the Galatians, and going back to that there, self-control, that kind of goes in with patience, and of course faith, which we just kind of went over there. So when you have the fruit of the Spirit, which comes from God, you have these things, right? And it's not without the other. Now, in an individual, I would say that each individual can have a different amount of them at a different time at any given moment. Meaning, we're not going to... Because peacefulness can just be like calm, right? But joyfulness can be like really loud, laughing, happy. And those kind of are opposites in a way, but they are connected. So I would say it's in amounts, right? So you can be like really joyful, you're still peaceful, but peace, is kind of like, that kind of like, I don't know, a way to describe it is something where I felt moments like that are just like you go somewhere, and because if you live in an area where it's like a city like I do, or a suburban area, you have cars and noise pollution. So, sometimes you'll go somewhere and, you never experience it. So I think it's, and, maybe not everyone pays attention to that, but like you'll go somewhere and then it's like somehow like the attenuation of the environment and then the sound waves around it, even if it's in a city area, it's almost like there's nothing, and you almost feel like a pressure on your eardrums because there's like no noise. You're just like, whoa. It's like quiet. Like that is like that peace, calm, but you're not jumping up joyfully, right? It's like it's just calm. Anyway, you also have mildness, which of course goes in with everything else, and self-control. Self-control fits into all those things, right? So, it says, if we are living by Spirit, let us go on walking orderly by Spirit. Let us not become egotistical, stirring up competition with one another, envying one another. So another admonition there as well, but we're not going to focus on that currently. So just talking about, again, putting on the new personality. So when we have these different situations we undergo, and for example, one of them, I will go into detail, my first one, is when I was newly baptized. I was basically baptized with someone, and it was during the pandemic, so it was done differently. Normally you would go to one of our, if it was at a circuit assembly, we have these circuit assemblies where we gather together and we receive a spiritual feast, and there's a part where there's a baptism. And usually that's when that's done, but because of the pandemic, we didn't have really one of those, so it was done at one of the friends in our congregation's home, and they lovingly, I still remember it, they heated their pool for 3 days before so that it wasn't very ice cold for us, because it was February when it happened, and so you're still a little bit in winter. Speaking of which, our February has been very cold. We have 30-degree mornings every morning. I have like ice all over my car. But anyway, to go with that, you can see how this situation would seem like, oh, nothing bad is going to happen, it's only good. But as I was very close with this individual, I started seeing the problems started happening. And, he was very much wanting me to, I felt like, take his side on things. But when I would remind him about, forgiveness and love regarding what he faced, he basically, kind of didn't want to hear it. And he wanted this apology due to him, like, for what happened. And basically, when you look at it, for him, it was a big deal. And, I don't want to say it wasn't. It's easy to get in that mindset where we say, well, it matters for me, but it doesn't, or it doesn't matter. Like, we might look at someone else's thing and say, well, that doesn't really make sense, or that's not important. But we can't do that, because that's also not in line with the fruitage of the Spirit, right? If someone has a problem, even if it involves us or not, and we're made aware of it, or we're directly involved in the problem, we can't ever look at it like, oh, well, it's not a big deal, basically. We can't do that, and a lot of that goes back to, again, the fruit of the Spirit: mildness, self-control. It's easy to take the path of least resistance, which is to say, I didn't do anything wrong, or, this isn't a big deal. But, and really in that situation, I wasn't part of it. I was, let's say, a mediator during that whole situation, because it involves some other people. And when it happened, I didn't think it would turn into what it did, but it seemed like from that situation, it turned into a whole mess. And that person talked about, and as far as notes, talked about badly and slandered other people in the congregation. In our congregation, I don't know if he did it with me, but he would always talk with me, and I would still talk with him. And for me, it was always trying to help him realize to get out of that mood that he was in, that bad spirit, that gloom. Remember what happened to King Saul, right? He lost the favor of God, and it was like he was no longer protected, and it said a bad spirit went into him, right? So, and I've seen videos where people talk about narcissism as being like a demon possession, or it's demonic or whatever, which maybe it is, and maybe he had some of that in it. But basically, the whole thing was definitely a test for me, because I was still involved. I could have cut off my relationship with him and just been like, no, early on from the beginning. But you have this attachment to someone because you're baptized with them, and you're still talking with him, and I would still hang out with him, and everything would be good, and then, like, out of nowhere, something would change, right? It was like I don't want to say bipolar, but that's kind of a way to describe it. And this situation basically put me in a way where I didn't have as much peace as I could have had during the time all this was taking place. And it was over a few years, right, after that. And it was interesting because, for me, I thought this situation and the one future took a few years ahead, which we'll also go over if the video's not too long, 13 minutes so far. I felt was, it was like, in a sense, the devil was using these individuals and their imperfections to try to have me leave, right? Basically leave from following him, leave the truth. And at times, if I'm being honest, there were times where I felt like not leaving, but just like, I just want to be like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to be involved. It's like, that's just it. I would just keep to myself or something, which would have been bad because we cannot isolate ourselves. Even though at times it did feel like that, where that still happened regardless, on no fault of my own, but maybe some saw that I was involved with this individual still, and they had to be careful around me or something. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I was always just trying to help him. But basically, the main things from that situation are, really understanding a person's background, no matter what they do to you or what you face. And this has to go with people in your own church or congregation. You might experience that, whatever it is, or people, situations in the world. We kind of can get very much like, the first thing is we might get very much like, really when we're not at fault, but we're involved somehow, we feel like we can either detach ourselves without understanding the other person, or trying to make peace with the other person with what they need, which is what I did do, but it kept going with that individual. But anyway, or the second thing being, we might get in a place where we think we can, mm, to feel a measure of something, maybe we can, gather together and, talk about this individual or something because everyone's experienced the same problem with them or something. I don't know. But those were kind of the two things with that, because there were moments where, I was asked about this person, and, in those moments where we're asked about them, it could be completely casual, but then, we might get in our mind, oh, I'm going to say something that's not good because, in our way, for us in our mind, even though the person's not there with us right now, we might get in a way we're saying, this is a way for me to feel good because I am getting back at them because I'm telling someone else about what they did, right? And we cannot do that. That is not Christ-like. So those were kind of the few things that happened with that. And yeah, he went on to do his own thing and left the congregation, and he's not really in the truth anymore. So as far as I know, because of the things I've seen him do, so to say, from just kind of looking him up, I guess you could say. Anyway, actually, you know what? Let's save the second one for another video, and we'll kind of add a few more examples here. As a just a quick exercise. Now, the one I wanted to scripture to add to that it's in Zechariah, and if I go to it here, come on, Zechariah 1:13, and it says. And of course it says here, and Yahweh, and Jehovah, American Standard Version, and Jehovah answered the angel that talked with me with good words, even comfortable words. So right here, the angel previously talking about said, O Jehovah of armies, how long will you withhold your mercy from Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, with whom you have been indignant these 70 years, right? So basically a redemption of the people, go back, rebuild the temple, rebuild Jerusalem, because of course we know they had the captivity and the exile, the Babylonian exile for the Jewish people. And of course this is a vision for the prophet, right? And it said, I just like this part because, and it kind of just fits in with all of this. It says, he answered the angel who's speaking with me with kind, comforting words. So, and that's how it was with him. I knew there were times where he was literally saying stuff to me like that was not good, and then I would go meet with him in person, and I would literally just be like, nothing happened. And that's what it means. Like, it says you need to forgive your brother, right? It says 77 times, right? We need to forgive our brother. And I think it's so, interesting because, again, it kind of goes to that where, it's like two realities of it. When we face something, we can either do it like, it's like the direct, sort of like we're trying to, get back, or there's the indirect getting back. And, we can't do that stuff. And so just in the same way, it said there, you answer with kind, comforting words whenever we would talk, or we were, after something happened, it'd be the same thing, it'd be kind, comforting, assuring. And that's the beautiful thing. Whenever something we face, we can always return that with goodness and comfort, which is what we're supposed to do. That's what we need to do as followers of Christ, right? Because the opposite, if you think about it, is not, And another scripture to go along with that is Proverbs 3:27, which fits in with this. Byington says, do not withhold a kindness from the one who might receive it when it is in your power to do it. Now, this, of course, you might figure as talking about, basically, we have like some sort of idea that we're going to do something, like a favor, right? Like it could be a physical thing, like a good deed. Don't withhold a good deed, but it applies to that as well. But it just basically can fit in with this thinking that if we are honestly in a state where we realize, and it's different when you don't realize what you're doing, and maybe you're doing it and it's wrong. But if you like are thinking like through your actions and steps, like, oh, I'm gonna do this for this because of this, then you've already done something wrong, because at that point you're aware of what you can do and cannot do. Therefore, if you're withholding the good part, right, and then only giving out the neutral or bad part, then you've already fallen short of that, and therefore you're going to basically not be manifesting the fruit of the Spirit, and then things can go on longer, right? In reality, when we're following Jesus, because that's what we are, followers of him, we follow his footsteps, we see that he was a perfect man. And you can know on things that I like to meditate on are probably his voice. He probably had like such a beautiful, calming voice. Just to hear his voice is such a privilege. When you think about his first miracle, right? The wine at the wedding from the basins and filled with water, and you probably think the wine tasted so beautiful. And the thing is, you know, when things happen, right? These situations, we don't want to, you know, again, withhold that fruitage of the Spirit, or that good part, because just like Jesus, who did all these good things, and he was a perfect man, and then people still hated him, he did not return it, but he could have. He realized the emotions he experienced, and probably, you know, he knew the power that he had. But I also like to think as well that in his thoughts as well, besides experiencing emotion, his thoughts were also perfect as well. Now, for us, our thoughts are imperfect, and that's kind of where we can stop any sort of bad thing. We can stop it in our mind, and then let forward what is good and spiritual and according to the fruit of the Spirit, right? And this can be applied to like literally everything. And when you learn and are cognizant of that, and that's something that I've, through help from God, that I've been able to do in these situations, it helps you realize, because again, you have to realize, and you have to be introspective. That's what it is. You have to be introspective and empathetic. When you put those two things together, you can understand the situation no matter what it is, and you can more easily have the personality you need to as a Christian, right? So I know I kind of jumped around a lot, and it's almost 25 minutes. I guess we'll end the video there, but that's just like the few things I wanted to go over. We're going to go over that second story, a second situation I had, and it's like the same, it's not the same thing, but it's like almost similar, where it was like a test in a way for me to, you know, not beyond what I could bear, but was able to, right, to manifest and show the qualities of the fruit of the Spirit despite the situation. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that little discussion. I hope you're able to kind of keep track of my thoughts. So I don't know, I don't, sometimes when I look at videos of myself, I'll be like, and was I doing that when I, like, you know, my mannerisms or whatever I was saying. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll have some more as well. And thank you all for watching.